This landmark building in Quebec is the Fairmont Chateau Frontenac Hotel. Beside it is a huge boardwalk area called the Governor's Promenade, offering views over the St. Lawrence River. My own hotel in the old part of the city was the Clarendon, which proudly noted that it opened in 1870. It faced the City Hall building across a plaza with an interesting water feature. It had been built into the roof of an underground car park. There were fountains of a more conventional kind in front of the Parliament building, which stands on a hill on the edge of the historic district of Old Quebec. The building houses the National Assembly, which was known as the Legislative Assembly until 1968. Old Quebec has many statues around its streets, and the Parliament's facade alone has 22 statues of major people from the province's history, and there are further statues scattered round the grounds. The entrance hall displays shields with emblems of France on one side and of England and Scotland on the other. The central staircase has a window commemorating Samuel de Champlain, the Frenchman who founded Quebec. The National Assembly chamber is commonly called the Blue Room. It had originally been white, then green, but when debates started to be televised, it was changed to the present blue for technical reasons. The Legislative Council chamber is commonly known as the Red Room. It was originally the upper house, but since becoming unicameral parliament, it is now a multi-function committee and event room. In the centre of the building is the Parlementaire restaurant, where I was able to book to have my breakfast in the splendid surroundings. Back outside again, there were well-tended gardens around the perimeter of the Parliament. When I was there were many horse-drawn carriages, providing tourists with a foot-saving way of seeing the old city. However, legislation in 2020 threatened the continuance of that long traditional service. There were special hitching posts for the horses. The building here is Notre Dame de Quebec Cathedral, which dates back to 1647 and has now been granted the status of basilica. At one side is the Sacred Heart Chapel, which is the location of the Eucharist Reserve. The cathedral is also privileged to have the only holy door in North America. It is classified as a National Historic Site of Canada. The baldachin over the altar is a real masterpiece. The angels on the chancel wall are its only support. The city ramparts round Old Quebec stretch for over 4 kilometres. There are 4 gates through the walls. It is possible to walk along the top of much of the ramparts or alongside them. They also are designated as a National Historic Site. Sections of the walls are floodlit at night, as are other buildings and features around the city. The sidewalk restaurants were well patronised both night and day. Much of the old town is pedestrianised, and there were other streets which were closed off to traffic later in the day. The Place Royale, surrounded by well-renovated buildings and popular cafes, is a good place to meet up. At one end of the square is the Notre Dame de Bon Secours Chapel, otherwise known as the Sailors' Church, where there are model boats hanging from the ceiling. Day or night, St. Patrick's seemed to do a roaring trade. The square beside the Chateau Frontenac Hotel was host to a Gothic fountain topped by the Monument of Faith. The plains of Abraham Battlefields Park was the site of the Battle of Quebec in 1759. This is one of the 3 Martello Towers on the site. The skyscraper building on the right has the city observatory perched on top. At 221 metres up, it provides a panoramic view of the city, both new and old. The Parliament buildings are bottom right, and the tower on the left is the Hilton Hotel. In the foreground are the city walls, and at their right-hand end is the citadel, built by the British after the battle. The fire-resistant metal-clad roofs in the old town can be seen glistening. My next visit was to the lower town, which I reached by a long flight of steps, although I could have used a bijou funicular. At the foot was the Quartier Petit Champlain, a pretty little street of cafes and boutiques. Down at the port there is an impressive row of grain elevators and silos, holding grain brought from the Canadian prairies by train and waiting to be onward shipped down the St. Lawrence River to the Atlantic. I next wanted to take the Levis ferry that shuttles between north and south banks of the river. There were other boats in port, one that provided a ferry service to the Magdalen Islands and another that made excursions on the St. Lawrence River. The journey over to the far bank takes less than 15 minutes for the 1-kilometre crossing, and the ferries operated a half-hourly shuttle service. The boats have to cross at an angle to counteract the strength of the current coming down the river. It was then time for me to return to my hotel to prepare for the next stage of my Canadian tour.